circle appeared that had a really interesting pattern. And right away, no one really knew exactly what this pattern was, but eventually they figured out that it mathematically, the pattern broke down to a message that was similar to the message that Carl Sagan composed in 1974, and that this message was sent into space by NASA. So basically in 1974, Carl Sagan and another scientist basically put together a message for aliens. They basically put a message together about humans and planet Earth and sent it into space wrapped up in a mathematical code, essentially. And what happened was 3 days after this face appeared in the crop, basically the exact same message that Sagan and this other scientist put together appeared in the crop field, but there were some differences. So it's a similar message, but there's a few differences. So real quickly on what the differences were. So the message that Carl Sagan put together, here's the elements that made up the message. It included information about our calculation system, so how we do math. It mentioned what the dominant element is that makes up Earth, which would be carbon, a life on Earth. It had information about our DNA code, information on average human height, that the Earth was the third planet in our solar system, and a picture of what our radio telescope looks like. Basically our means of communication that was sending the transmission. The crop circle that appeared in this field was the same message, but the differences were where our message said carbon, it said silicon was the main element of life. It showed a DNA with 3 strands instead of R2. It showed a humanoid figure just like ours, except it was only 4 feet tall and had a huge head. That species inhabited the 3rd, 4th, and 5th planets in its solar system and had a population of 21 billion. And its telescope was something way more complex than ours. This is where it gets a little bit more stranger. A year later, in a nearby town, another crop circle shows up again, showing another alien face, but this time a different alien face. Okay, so a year later, nearby town, another alien face shows up, different type of alien face, and around it there's basically a code. No one could figure out the code. Then finally someone realized it was binary. It was a series of zeros and ones. The way that the crops, if it was up, it was a 1, or down, it was a 0, or in reverse. So he deciphered the binary code, and it read, "Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception." Then, of course, the question is, well, does the message say that the face that it was next to, are they the bearers of broken promises, or are they the one giving this message? And is the face from the year before, are they the ones that sent the second message?
Is it possible that was just straight from Homer's Iliad when Laocoon said that about the Greeks? Just don't trust them bearing gifts, and any of that is not possible.
I don't know. I don't know the story. Okay. That's your era.
Yeah,
of
we'll talk
expertise.
about that in another one.
Well, actually, that kind of takes us up to the conclusion. So, all right, so that kind of gets us to the story, and that's where kind of like things peak a little bit. Like I said earlier, kind of a question why we don't hear about crop circles as much today as we did then. They still continue, but they don't get the attention. Well, I guess it's just no longer new. Just like everything else in the news cycle. It's like if they put on the news, they're like, "Oh, crop circles." Like, yeah, that's been going on for 30 years now. So, But just one thing, I had a couple audio clips. I think I'm going to skip those because it really just enforced things we already talked about. But the one thing that, before we offer up our conclusions, just keep this in mind, because it was a question that the Cereologists bring up, and I think it's a valid question. If these are all just man-made hoaxes, if that's all these are, if all these crop circles are simply man-made hoaxes, where are the practice crop circles and where are the half-finished ones? There's never been a photograph or an aerial shot. I mean, people are flying over England all the time because there's people who make a living just flying around to look for crop circles to take pictures, like photographers around. No one's ever seen anybody making one really from the air that wasn't already known that it was going to be made. No one's ever seen a half-finished one, like one someone started and didn't finish, or like a practice one, which is just odd.
Measure twice, cut once.
Is that Harrison Ford? No, where is that from?
I don't know. My best friend Nick told me that when we were, dropping cable at my parents' house sometime.
Yeah. I know it's in a movie somewhere.
Measure
too.
Twice, cut once. There's no reason they needed to practice.
I know my dad says that.
That's because your dad's a
carpenter. Yeah, I think it's a carpenter. Yeah, it's completely a carpenter thing. So, all right, let's go in reverse here.
Starting with Fred.
No, we're going to go in first. Jeff. This is kind of the
more
point.
questions than answers now. I mean, I started off as this huge skeptic, and the fact that a lot of these haven't been observed and people haven't come forward. I mean, it just makes me wonder how that's possible. So,
what do you think's going on? And we call this the getting off the fence. Now, I fully admit that I've stolen this from the another podcast as Conspiracy Guys, but at the end they say it's called the getting off the fence, where you just have to just go a direction with what you think your best guess. So it's good. It's good, Matt. It's fine. What is your best guess, and just why? And even if you want to start, let's all start with this. Let's do this first. Here, I'll make it easy on you. What do you think it's not?
What do I think it's not?
Yeah. What do you think is the least likely answer? And then we'll circle back around to you just to get since this is your first time getting off the fence.
The least likely answer is that it's just some kind of it's that they just appear without any force creating it.
I think I would. I don't think, good luck finding someone to disagree with.
So say that again.
I mean, they just can't appear. I guess what
they
I'm saying
don't
is
appear
that,
without force. that there must be force.
I'm saying that
there must be force.
Because if it's not a hoax,
then it must be real.
And I just
Is there one? All right. Was there one simple thing you think it's not? I'll give you an example. Like one of the suggestions that there's a scientist has brought up. Like he said it's wind. It's
okay.
they're just wind formations.
All right, I say it's not wind.
Yeah.
We'll just keep going.
Well, that's
keep
my
playing
thing.
This game. How long do we have? We'll keep playing this game. Do you think it's a volcano?
No.
Okay. This is how we did Sir No Face.
This is not how we did Sir No Face at all.
Yeah, we went through the things of what we thought it wasn't.
The three common possibilities is how we did Sir No Face. Yeah.
Okay. Well, is there a way?
Not a volcano.
Not a volcano.
All right. What do you think it's not?
Me?
Yeah, not.
It is not proof of aliens.
I agree with that.
It is not. Well, yeah, we'll say that.
Okay.
It is not proof of aliens.
I agree with that. It's not proof of aliens. I kind of offered up to Jeff to hoping he would get something else, and he stole mine. But like, it's not wind form. It's not wind. Wind is not creating sacred art.
You know what gets me about
unless wind is the hand of God. Unless God's using the wind to create.
I mean, I guess it could be wind, but how do you? We haven't even really talked about the way it overlaps.
Yeah, go ahead and mention that because it is an important part.
It's like woven almost.
Yeah,
it's not just
laid down. Like when they show
you're
Doug
believing
and Dave,
the seriologists.
Yeah,
it's woven.
Yeah,
so it's not just laid down.
Do you remember seeing that, Jeff, in the documentaries?
One over, one under, one over, one under, one over, one over.
Like when you watch the footage of Doug and Dave doing it, they have like a 3 foot, 4 foot wide plank, and they're just pushing down 3 foot, 4 foot sections at a time in front of them
in opposite directions.
And when you see these ones that kind of defy explanation, like Matt's saying, it's almost like it's weaved together,
so
every few inches or something.
Wind doesn't weave.
Right.
I agree with that.
Wind does not weave, so it's not wind.
Yeah. Okay. Who's starting?
I'll get off the fence.
All right, good.
So we're going to start.
Be our leader this time.
Oh, I'm your leader. This isn't going to take... how much time do we have?
However long we want.
I've been holding back. First of all, seriologists is bullshit. I'm just telling you I could be a seriologist right now if I wanted to be a seriologist.
Yes, correct.
A seriologist is a bullshit title. That means nothing to anybody. There's no degree involved. In fact, I looked up seriologist degree on Google, and somebody should do this sometime, and it automatically corrected it to cardiologist degree. Okay.
Well, it's also like when I did my demonology podcast, people that call themselves demonologists. I guess technically there is a field of study called demonology.
Yeah, that's a subset of mythology.
Right.
That's a legitimate study.
But the problem is the people that go around calling themselves demonologists are actually not demonologists.
Yeah, I remember Stan talking about that on the thing. So I cannot emphasize that enough. The seriologist is a bullshit title. I am not a seriologist because a seriologist fully believes that. One, they study crop circles. First of all, seriologist from someone who, I'm a classics major, right? Cereologist would be somebody who studies grain, coming from the god Ceres, or the goddess Ceres, the goddess of grain. All right, so that's number one. So that leaves us with, we basically say there are two possibilities. And just listening to Jeff, listening to Fred, watching the podcast.
You mean watching the documentaries?
Yeah, watching the documentary, sorry, in preparation for the podcast. There are basically two theories. It's aliens or it's a hoax.
Are you saying that those are the two theories that are generally put out there?
Those are the two theories that are generally put out there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come at this from a third.
I think there's well more than two. I would think there's more than three, but I understand. Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing.
Those are the two.
Yeah.
Those are the two. It's either aliens or it's a hoax.
And that's why I said at the beginning when I was asking everybody like what they thought about it. Remember when I said like basically it was just presented as it's either hoax or these are things made by aliens. Like from day one, it was always presented that way to us. Like in the 80s, it's like crop circles, most likely messages from aliens, and that's just always
even
been
the movie
narrative.
The movie Signs, right, is all about a message from aliens, and it's got a big crop circle on the poster. So those are your two common agreed things. Now Jeff said he came at it from the angle of a skeptic. Right, Fred basically came at it from the angle of someone who just thirsts for knowledge, but tended to probably agree with something. At least that's how I interpret Fred. He'll tell you his in a second. What's cool about my perspective is this isn't like Sir No Face and ghosts and the other things we've talked about. This to me is something I genuinely had no opinion on.
Before doing this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Aliens are the one thing I love the most. They're the one thing that I always tell my wife, I want so badly for aliens to be real.
Right.
I do. I don't know if they exist. And honestly, if I saw one walk through the door right now, I'd be really disappointed. Because it's the unknowing that makes this fun for me. Right? So aliens to me are something that they're fun to explore. They're fun to research. So I wanted crop circles so badly to be proof of aliens. It is not proof of aliens. Nor is it 100% a hoax. So here's my opinion on what happens. We talked about how snowflakes form. We talked about how you put a snowflake under a microscope and there's a beautiful art to it. We've talked about how there's something energetic about the aquifer underneath these areas of England. I fully believe that there is an electromagnetic phenomenon that happens that creates these shapes.
And we didn't mention, too, and not to derail you here, but just to support what you're saying, being the definitive podcast, these things do occur like where there's magnetic lines, but also near like Stonehenge and these ancient sites that are also believed to have something to do with the magnetic lines and energy of Earth.
So they could further prove that Stonehenge might actually have been from a previous group, species that lived here. But I'm not saying that's necessarily true. The other things that point to that, you go in there and you have strange physical feelings. Your blood does strange things. Your battery-powered objects have strange reactions. Further indicates to me that there's some sort of electromagnetic abnormality in that area.
So while you call this cereologist BS,
they're bullshit.
You do accept that there are some quantifiable things going on in these crop circles.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And mostly I can support that because we see the impacts of electromagnetic field every single day. So the electromagnetic field to me is not some bullshit degree. Right. People who study electromagnetic fields have gone to school for legitimate topics, and we see the results of that, and we manipulate that regularly. You know, I can wrap copper around I can create a magnet of my own by wrapping copper wire. Yeah. So electromagnetic fields are real. That is scientifically proven fact. Electromagnetic fields having impact on electrical devices is proven fact. If you watch experiments on even what an electromagnetic pulse can do to electronic devices. So we know that electromagnetic fields have an interesting thing. Now, do we know what they do to non-magnetic particles? No. But we know that there's a surge of energy that can exist between electromagnetic fields. Hell, lightning itself is electric energy coming from both the sky and the ground simultaneously, right, to create a big bolt of lightning. And what's a big bolt of lightning do? It's an extremely powerful surge of energy. So there's no reason why I can't accept that these types of things happen. that there's a surge, which could also explain, as I said before, the white balls, right?
Yeah.
They could also explain, not